Daniel Pinchbeck is an author. If you've never heard of him, he's got a great book called Breaking Open the Head, and another one called 2012, The Return of Quetzalcoatl. Is that how did I say it right?
Good enough.
Good enough, close enough. Quetzalcoatl. And just an all-around fascinating dude. Thanks for coming by, man. I'm sorry you got stuck in traffic, but it's almost appropriate because you're sort of a little bit of a doom and gloom, end of civilization sort of a dude, and there's a giant power outage in L.A. that fucked traffic upside down.
Well, yeah, now that I know that, I feel better about the situation.
Yeah. Do you, though? Oh, finally, some apocalyptic shit's happening. And while I'm here, perfect.
In New York, we just had a hurricane and an earthquake in 1 week.
Yeah, I moved here when the earthquake happened. I moved here only a month after the earthquake in '94 happened, and it was this feeling of humility in LA that I liked. Like when I first got here, I was like, people seem kind of shook up, but they seem pretty friendly. You know, sort of almost like, you know, any sort of a natural disaster does to any big group of people. You know, they. What are you doing there, buddy?
I'm looking at your alpha brain.
You want some?
What is it?
It's on nootropics. It's vitamins for cognitive function.
Sure, why not? Maybe I'll get brighter.
Yeah, it's 1.5 million people don't have power right now. I think was the last.
In Los Angeles?
In Los Angeles right now, which is kind of crazy.
Well,
Yeah, it is
I
crazy.
mean, that's a lot of fucking people.
We sell those. I'll get you a bottle of those things, man. We just started putting those out on onnit.com, ONNIT.com. And what it is there's a lot of different things that people take to improve mental function, and we just put the highest ingredients together and started selling it.
nice.
It's fascinating stuff, man. You know, the science of it is a little sketchy. A lot of people call it bullshit, but I think it works. It works for me, man. Even if it's just a placebo effect, I'll take all the lies that you tell me if I believe them.
It seems like it works to me too.
Well, the dreams are no question. You take them and you have these crazy, vivid, rememberable dreams. It's very unusual, and supposedly it's because of choline. Is that how you say it? Is that the nutrient?
I
believe you said it's called choline, but apparently it's known to stimulate dreams. It gives you fucking weird, creepy, memorable dreams. I got a weird dream about a werewolf and a gorilla having sex. And I was trying to be quiet and get out of the room before they realized I was there.
Yeah.
Because, you know.
I was last night. I was laying in bed and I was looking up your books on Amazon, and the one cover he has is so trippy. I actually spent a good time just scrolling up and down on my browser, just looking at the cover.
Which one? Breaking Open the Head?
I think so.
Probably.
Yeah, the one that has the mushroom in the middle, and then it's just like it was fucking awesome. That's how stoned I was last night.
Dude, you're here when this is. What if this really was going down? Like right now in Los Angeles. Are you prepared? Because I know you're a big 2012 advocate, and I've talked to you about.
Well, I'm just out of Burning Man, so at least I have my flashlight and Camelback.
Did you just leave Burning Man?
Yeah, 3 days ago. Yeah.
Wow.
How was it?
It was great.
Now you're like my age, right?
45.
I'm 44. Are you not tired of those crazy hippies yet? The really nutty ones?
No, you know, whatever. I mean, I like the whole scene. I mean, it's all sorts of genius people there, actually.
Yes,
like extraordinary,
definitely.
like not just hippies, but the heads of all the technology companies.
yeah.
I had a debate with some Google exec who's a yoga practitioner, and you know, just I have lots of great conversations around there. I mean, it's all the psychedelic community. I mean, I spent a lot of time with this woman who runs the Women's Visionary Congress, and my friend John Perry Barlow, who wrote lyrics for the Grateful Dead and started Electronic Freedom Foundation. It's actually an amazing, brain trust of human oddities and eccentric fossils.
I believe that, but there's also a lot of douchebags, and you got to wade through them. And when what you are is like this figurehead for this psychedelic movement in sort of a lot of ways. So you must get a lot of crackpots. And when I say douchebags, it's not their fault.
I didn't.
There's a lot of crazy
to be honest,
people.
I actually didn't have one douchebag experience, and a lot of people did come up to me. And who had read my books or seen the film, and people were extremely respectful and actually kind of moving. Some people told me that the books had affected them or impacted their lives or whatever.
I mean, every Dead show I've ever been to, or any Fish show I've ever been to, it's never been douchebags. So even though you would think that there would be a shitload of douchebags, everyone has this positive vibe to them. So everyone, even if there are a douchebag, they still have this underlining. Yeah, I'm happy and in love. I want to give you love and positive energy. It seems like the whole scene and stuff like that.
So I just have a negative idea.
I think so. I think you're
you're
like Cartman right now.
I lived in Boulder for a while. Became very terrified of hippies.
You're very East Coast.
I was so hippie before. I was so down with it. Then you're around them for a while, and God, so many people are fucking crazy. You know, everybody's crazy. You know, there's Republicans are crazy, right wing Christians are crazy. I mean, you look at the Republican convention. You look at these speeches, these debates that they're having. It's like one nutty fucking person after a nutty person. I mean, this fucking the guy from California, or the guy from Massachusetts, rather, Mitt Romney. He's a Mormon. I mean, at a certain point in time, you got to go, come on, man, really? You believe that Joseph Smith, this 14-year-old kid, found these golden tablets with the lost works of Jesus, and only you could read them because you had a magic rock? Really? Right? At a certain point in time? I mean, how is a guy like that allowed to even run for president? If there's certain things that you believe, I mean, do you think that there should be a line that, like, look, someone can pull you aside and go, come on, man, this is crazy?
It would be very hard to draw that line at this point. I mean, people, believing in the Bible and so on, it's hard enough.
Well, how about the 6,000-year people? The people that really believe the Earth is 6,000 years old. There's a lot of them. Sarah Palin. She really believes that. A
lot of people do. I think you learned from that movie Red State that like everybody, there's this big center of the world that's really crazy. And like fucking, they believe crazy shit. Like, you can't even... I just watched that Wild Whites of West Virginia.
Oh, I mean,
those people believe probably things that you would be amazed.
I don't think they're thinking about that. They're just pill-popping people and partiers.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? The Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia?
Nope.
It's a fascinating yet terrifying documentary that Johnny Knoxville put together about this family in West Virginia that's completely crazy. All they're just constantly committing crimes and selling pills and going on rampages and get arrested. And it's just a fascinating family that's just not living by the rules that you or I live by. You know,
now, Burning Man was sold out this year, and it's just like I think the first time that it was ever sold out. Did it seem like overly crowded, or did it seem like why did they even put a limit to it?
Well, they don't have a control over that. It's the Bureau of Land Management. I think it's actually because it counts as a city. It's only allowed to grow 3% per year. Wow. So it was growing from 51 to 54,000 or something like that.
Right.
Something like that. So yeah, I mean, it could easily go up to 75 or 100,000 in terms of the space there. I mean, they can just keep adding avenues and expanding it and so on.
Did you see any awesome art? Did you see any wow, they took it to the next level type shit this year?
Yeah, there was some beautiful stuff. There was a huge model of the Trojan horse, which 300 Greeks in white togas dragged through the gates. Then they blew it up in spectacular fashion on Friday night. There was lots of fun stuff.
Oh, that sounds pretty fucking bad.
I want to go so bad. Like I talked about it maybe 20 podcasts ago. Like I was thinking about going, and I'm mad at myself for not going.
My perceptions are always just going to be some really cool people, but just going to wade through some knuckleheads to get to them. But you're sounding like it's not that way. You're sounding like it's pretty positive overall.
Yeah, I mean, I still like it.
Still like it. What if December 21st, 2012 is the big day, and that's, etched in stone, and a lot of people's ideas about a lot of the shit that you write about and a lot of the shit that people think of about the coming of the next age. If it rolls around and nothing happens, then what?
Right on. Yeah, well, I mean, once again, actually, people would have to look at whatever I said and read about it. Because I never particularly said that anything was going to happen.
Absolutely
on
true.
that date.
Yes,
I mean,
you absolutely have not.
On the other hand, it seems to me that it's super clear that we're in, like the middle of a transformation. That we can see now the global economy is buckling. The planetary ecology is also buckling. We've hit peak oil. A lot of the resources are in serious depletion. We're faced with an end game for the current global civilization that we're in.
Is that peak oil thing been clearly established?
Yeah, it's been very clearly established.
So everyone agrees it's not a debated thing?
Well, I mean, of course, there's some debate and there's some disinformation. There's a lot of money involved. But if you look at what the main geologists talk about, and it's a prediction that was made back in the 70s even.
And that's why they're trying to get all this oil in Canada. That there's big protests have been happening on the White House lawn where Daryl Hannah got arrested. One of the NASA's top climate scientists got arrested, and they're protesting this extraction, which is apparently incredibly inefficient.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's why we are in wars in Libya, Afghanistan, and Iraq, and why we're trying to hold down the our access to the remaining resources. But yeah, so I never have anticipated that anything exactly would happen on December 21st, 2012, although it certainly might. But I think that what we need to do, and what I tried to do in my work up to this point, is really try to take a big step back and look at our situation and factor in all sorts of stuff that, you know, the modern worldview is not really factoring in, which for me includes shamanism, you know, the DMT experience, psychic experience in general, you know, the kind of psychic capacities that actually many people are aware of that happen all the time, whether it's synchronicity or telepathy and so on.
We were on the phone today. I talked to you about it. Like I picked up my phone and I was going through the contacts to find your number, and the phone rang, and it was you.
I love that shit.
That's as creepy as it gets. There's a lot of minutes in the day, man.
More and more the older I get.
How do you know when I'm calling you, man? There's a lot of goddamn minutes in the day. When was the last time I fucking called you? I mean, yeah, you were supposed to be on the podcast today, and we had emailed each other about it, but we hadn't talked on the phone in a long ass time. That's a weird coincidence.
Right. Well, I mean, you could say that it's weird and creepy, but then you kind of get past that point and you just kind of integrate it. And it's like, okay, there's actually something. You know, one consciousness that's kind of working through all of us, and you know, as time moves on in this period, it seems like those synchronicities are speeding up, and our you know, psychic capacities are somehow intensifying. You know. But I will say that my one idea I'm working on for December 21st, 2012 is to utilize the date, because now there's so much popular focus on it, to create a kind of global event, which would be a kind of spectacle. I'm working with composers and a team from Cirque du Soleil, and they're kind of putting together a concept for a show that would kind of celebrate humans' evolution, you know, humanity's evolution to this present point, and then ending with a synchronized peace meditation, kind of global focus on unity, with the idea that you could take the energy for that, you know, that's pointed towards that day, and there's so much fear around it and anxiety and trepidation, and actually make it into like the most awesome thing possible, where it's like, well, look where we've arrived at, and look at our opportunities now to make a shift and a jump into a new form of planetary civilization.
Well, this is the clearest time in human history where the common person, any person really, has a direct influence over an incredible amount of people with viral information, with videos, and with anything that you write that really resonates with people. You can hit an amazing amount of people now. So a guy like you could get in touch with a bunch of other people who could do exactly the same thing, and a ripple effect can go on, and it can hit millions and millions easy. There's never been an opportunity to do anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, we totally love to have you involved with our Unify Earth project.
I would love to. Sure.
Cool. You should do it at SeaWorld.
Sure. Cirque du Soleil, I'm down.
Actually, we're actually working with.
It's awesome to watch.
At the moment, we're actually in negotiation with the Mexican government to use Chichen Itza, which is considered by the Mayans to be the heart of the Mayan world.
You know what would be the shit, dude? A Toby Keith concert at Chichen Itza. Would that be the most ironic thing of all time? Toby Keith is like this super rah-rah American country music singer. Right, yeah. He's like, Saddam Hussein will kick your ass. You know, he's like one of those guys. He's a good singer. I mean, he's got good songs, but they're just, some of them are like real knucklehead rah songs. I just think him on the fucking pyramids playing a concert might be one of the most ironic things of all time.
I'm here at the pyramids.
How awesome America is. You can love it or leave it. He had a good song about smoking weed with Willie Nelson, though. He's got good music. I just think it would be funny.
It would be funny.
Yeah, I'm scared of Chichen Itza, though.
Don't ever forget that dream, Joe. You write that dream down right now.
No, it's on the internet now. This is
we
live.
can draw this dream for you.
You're right. Boy should never stop dreaming.
Don't ever stop.
I think, as you do, that things are moving in a certain direction. And I wonder how much people steer it, you know, how much things like this steer it, how much communication online steers it. Because it seems to me this is the only time where people have been able to sort of like merge in this way globally on their own and do it on a regular basis. You know, people are addicted to just going on Twitter, addicted to communicating with people on message boards and on Facebook, and there's an interconnectivity that's never existed before. So an idea, the idea of a hive mind, like influenced by anyone, is way different now than it's ever been in human history, as far as we know, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely, yeah.
It's an amazing time.
Mm-hmm, yeah, for sure. I mean, one idea that a lot of different people are kind of moving towards this idea that maybe humanity's on the verge of transitioning into being kind of like a supra-organism, you know, that we're kind of like coming to awareness of ourselves as a singular being in a sense, you know, and then we can, you know, begin to act more symbiotically rather than like parasitically or aggressively.
There was a really fascinating article recently written on creativity and how people are always praising creativity and looking forward to getting new and creative ideas, but that other people's creativity actually makes people uncomfortable. It makes people uncomfortable and uneasy. And the idea that someone had come up with these ideas that they didn't, you know, and, you know, you wonder if like the really powerful push towards fundamentalism, the really powerful push towards the 6,000-year-old Earth kind of shit, and follow the Bible kind of shit, is really the same thing as someone.
Well, I mean,
trying to confine creativity. They're trying to confine enlightenment.
Well,
the same reason.
Right. I guess my feeling is basically, we live in a culture where there's, basically people are being indoctrinated not to think. They're being indoctrinated by the media, the mainstream culture, by the education system, to be ignorant, to not question, to not develop their independent capacity of thought.
Are you okay? But are you saying this from the education system, or are you saying this from the media?
Yeah, from both, I think.
Okay, but the media does not make you dumb, right?
Oh, yes, it does. The media makes people incredibly stupid.
But it makes you dumb? You can't watch CNN
I don't watch that stuff. But I mean...
But if you did, you think it would affect you?
Yeah, but if I'm in a hotel room and I watch that stuff for a couple of days, I feel like I'm having a lobotomy.
Whoa, really? Just
Sure.
CNN?
Yeah, of course.
You can't just see it as a program?
No, all these things are, from my perspective, they're basically kind of holding the mass consciousness, the planetary consciousness, at a certain low level or low frequency. Where it's passive, consumerist, fear-based. There's this violent activity, very disjointed. It creates a lot of frustration and anxiety. There's no deeper analysis. There's no attempt to create like a coherent understanding of what's happening in any sense.
I could see your point that maybe perhaps it isn't used to its utmost abilities or the capabilities that we would have for it, but I don't think that it's not a good form of entertainment. I don't think it has to be either or. I feel like you could sit home and watch a fucking silly TV show and it doesn't hurt you. I mean, I think this idea that we're helpless to media constantly bombarding us with these images and ideals, and that we have to accept them, I think that's silly. And I think that, honestly, with the internet, you look at the society that's growing out of the internet, look at like movements like Anonymous, look at shit like this, things that have never happened before, these giant groups moving forward and taking down websites and taking down companies that they feel have acted unjustly. No one's ever been able to do something like that before. That's stevia if you want it.
Oh, that's good.
You're gonna have some coffee.
Good. Thanks. Yeah. Well, I mean, so we have two things. We have a number of things are happening simultaneously, and that's another thing that's very interesting about our time, is that things are getting pretty complicated.
Right.
Now, one problem with television in general is that it's designed to reduce everything into tiny little sound bites. When Lincoln and Jefferson debated in the 1860s, the debates lasted 8 hours. When we have a debate on TV, each person gets like 36 seconds for this response, 22 seconds. We're basically used to everything being spoon-fed and dumbed down to an absolute level of stupidity. And basically the problem is that because our scenario on the planet is very complex at this point, we actually need to be able to articulate and analyze at a much deeper level. So yes, we have two things going on. We have the one-directional mass media, which I really am convinced is basically a kind of lobotomy machine that anesthetizes people into an ultimate state of idiocy and consumerist passivity. And then we have the development of this new interactive media, which is having profound effects and will continue to have profound effects. And if you go look at the history of media, every time there's a new form of media that's very powerful, it transforms the society, the political system, the government, changes everything. You could never have had an empire until you had a written code of laws that could be distributed, to the borders and beyond. You could never have had a modern representational democracy, nation state, unless you had the printing press, which distributed enough material so that everybody could participate in civic dialogues. Now with this interactive technology potentially points towards a much deeper transition in our political and social paradigm, potentially towards away from centralized control hierarchy to more of a kind of distributed or direct democracy.
And interconnectedness as human beings in general. No one's been this close to this many people just through online communication. No one has ever had that kind of an influence before by such a wide variety of people and ideas. All coming at you.
And then look how incredibly new it is. I mean, we're just adapting. We're just like treading water, trying to catch up with this force that our culture has unleashed.
And it's good, or is it no? Or is it?
Awesome.
Is it
Sure.
awesome?
Well, if you love change, it's great. I mean, if you're somebody who heads Warner Records, you're probably scratching your head at this point.
I had the most fascinating conversation. Yeah, right. I had the most fascinating conversation with a guy who was trying to say that Google was bad and the idea of the internet search is bad. I go, why? He goes, because it used to be if you wanted knowledge, you had to go look for it. I was like, wow, that might be the craziest fucking thing I've ever heard. You think it should be hard to find that shit? It should be hard. You should have to go to a library and look up the right book. It should take hours. No, you should be able to say to your phone.
That's very much like people who talk about, you shouldn't take a psychedelic because it's like a shortcut to the mystical experience.
Right.
And of course, the answer to that is like, what's wrong with a shortcut? If I'm trying to get somewhere, am I going to go like all around in like a circuitous, boring route, or am I going to just take the friggin' shortcut?
That reminds me of a joke that Terrence McKenna used to say. That some guy practiced a city of levitation for 40 years and figured out finally how to float. And he came up to the Buddha and he said, Master, I can walk across the water. And the Buddha said, but the ferry's only a nickel. I mean, take the fucking mushroom. Take a chance, dude. Take a shortcut. Not only that, the idea that you are independent from nature and that you don't need some help in any way. I mean, you're constantly getting help from nutrients and vitamins and protein and all these different things that you absorb through nature. But then when it comes to this that you think may or may not do something to your mind, you're not. I can get there naturally.
Yeah. We'll get back to get back to the Google search. I think that the fact that we now have so much knowledge and information, at our disposal is an extraordinary thing. But then the question is still, how do we manage that? What do we do with it? And what type of, society can we pull ourselves into, because at the moment what we have is not going to last very much longer.
I like what you said, pull ourselves into, because it's going to have to be that, because you're going to have to pull away from the system that we have now. Especially the financial system. And we've learned from when Ron Paul wanted the audits of the bailouts and people found out how many trillions of dollars had been sent into this whole idea of bailouts and where this tax dollars went. I think a lot of people became really disillusioned and disenfranchised and had no connection to it. You know what I mean? I mean, when it happened, did it make any sense to you? When you were hearing about the bailouts, did any of that make any sense to you?
I don't pay attention to it.
It's like it seems like a system you can't fix. So it seems like it almost feels like trying to go against the machine that's currently in place is so intangible. It's like so gigantic. Yeah. The financial system is completely and utterly corrupt and unrecognizable. It's impossible to understand.
Right. Well, that's like been a bunch of the work I've been doing over the last few years. I mean, in the film, actually, we interviewed you for the film. We didn't end up using your interview. We just couldn't somehow splice it in. I did a documentary.
Put it online.
2012 Time for Change, and we interviewed this guy Bernard Lietaer, who was he's an economist. He was one of the architects of the euro. He wrote a great book called The Future of Money, and in that book, he and in our film also, we discussed how the financial system is broken. It really doesn't matter at this point who you put in control, because it's still just like a car with no brakes. But that actually we're going to have to reinvent instruments for exchanging value that actually have fundamentally different value systems connected to them. So, for instance, he proposes a currency which he calls the Terra that has a negative interest charge. So it's a new trading currency, a global trading currency that's indexed not to just a virtual abstraction like our money currently is, but actually is indexed to a basket of real-world goods and resources that decline in value over time, because most things do. So if the longer you held on to a Terra, the less it would be worth.
So instead of a gold standard, it would be based on a bunch of different
exactly
things?
A bundle of resources that would include fuel and wheat and processed foods and unprocessed goods and so on. And as a summation of all of that, it would actually decline in value. It would have what's called a demurrage charge. So when people got a bunch of these Terras through some business deal, rather than seeking to hoard them or hold on to them, that wouldn't work. So they would be best, used by putting them back into circulation, by sharing them or whatever. So that's Lietaer's concept, and one of many concepts. We're actually publishing a book through my company, Evolver, called Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein. It's actually already up it's out on the internet, and you can get copies. But he actually puts together a whole paradigm looking at the inevitability of the financial system breaking down, and really seeing that rather than just having one monopoly of a value exchanging instrument like money that's controlled by private banking interests, you could really create a whole ecology of different ways of exchanging value that would be used for different purposes.
Do you think that the government would ever allow something like that to actually take place? I mean, it almost seems like trying to create a government inside a government.
Well, I mean, it's happened before. I mean, for instance, in the Depression, they reissued a lot of local currencies, and it was also done in the 19th century, obviously.
I read about a town in North Carolina or South Carolina that's trying to do that right now.
Exactly. Well, I think that's definitely going to be on the horizon because people are not going to be able to use this
Yeah, it was
currency.
a small town, and they had their own currency in this town, and there was a debate about its legality.
And in fact, if you look at the bankruptcy of the government and the effects of peak oil and all this other stuff going on, the capacity of the federal government to intervene into metal may actually become radically reduced in the next years, because there's just not going to be the money available for that kind of endless, effort.
Damn.
My face is melting.
Thinking about what he's saying?
Yeah, it was just like so much information I'm thinking about right now.
Well, is it possible that none of this will actually happen, that we'll sort of stumble into the finish line?
No, it's not possible.
It's not possible.
It's absolutely not possible.
So you think it's absolutely 100% that the society that we currently enjoy is going to collapse?
Absolutely, 100%.
Wow.
I mean, it's obvious.
What kind of a time frame are you giving it?
Could be a year, could be 10 or 15 years. But the point is to recognize that we're in it now. I mean that our faith in capitalism. Capitalism is a system that has an inherent instability to it, and basically what it requires is constantly new markets that need to be turned into money. So you can keep the dynamism. That you can keep the debt growing and you keep extending the credit. But I think what we're going to realize soon enough is that capitalism was not a final system; it was a transitional system. We don't know what that transition is into yet. But capitalism is like an adolescent system. It's like aggressive, compulsive, competitive. At a certain point, you have to shift into maturity and adulthood, and you have to let go of some of that adolescent compulsion.
How important is psychedelics in this equation? Because the best tool, in my opinion, to sort of calm down those instincts, those competitive, super hyper aggressive instincts, is psychedelics, and it's one of the most illegal things. No, I haven't.
You should try it.
You think that really helps?
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's funny because it makes me violent when I watch it.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
No, I'm just kidding.
It's so fun.
So I think that psychedelics have tremendous value. I mean, people always say that I'm an advocate of psychedelics, and I suppose that's true to a certain extent. But I also feel that it's an individual decision. They're not for everybody, and obviously they're still illegal and frowned upon in our society. Okay?
Right.
But the fact is that one of the values of psychedelics is they kind of decondition you from your present state of consciousness and your kind of social ideology and belief system. There's a kind of peeling away. I remember the first time I took mushrooms, one of the first experiences I had was going to a deli and buying something with money and just finding it totally ludicrous that our culture invested so much belief in these wrinkly, brown, ugly pieces of paper, and that everybody was kind of so disconnected from their present experience and focused on the sports or the stock ticker or all this crap, from my opinion. So I think that peeling away back to a kind of, phenomenological, as they say, level of just presence of being, that's a very powerful thing. And we tend, as humans, it's very easy for us to get lost in abstractions and concepts, and then we believe in our concepts. We think that they're real. So the psychedelics can break that investment we've made and all these things that we think are real that are just abstractions and concepts.
Does it have to be either or? Can you enjoy a good movie and still be a person who believes that we're evolving as a consciousness and that we are in an adolescent state of evolution and somehow or another we're in a transitionary period and we're all coming? But can't you just enjoy the X-Men?
I actually love the X-Men.
You love the X-Men?
Yeah,
so that's cool. Movies are cool. Just tell me what's cool. Movies are cool, but TV's not. Do you ever see Walking Dead? It's a pretty fucking good show, man. There's zombies and there's people trying to survive. It's fucking fun. Sometimes I like to sit in front of something and watch some shit that somebody created that's supposed to entertain me. I don't think it has to cut your capacity for thinking and reason and logic and original thought. I don't think it has to. I think it could just be fun to watch. I think a lot of people are conditioned by it. A lot of people are weak, but a lot of people fucking eat cheeseburgers all day and become 700 pounds.
Right on. Well, I mean, I'm not like in a, I don't judge other. You enjoy whatever you want to enjoy. I don't really care. I mean, personally, what I like are kind of when I get excited now about popular narratives, it's more because I see in them the seeds of part of this transformation that's underway. Now, for instance, if you look at like a lot of the most archetypally huge stories that our culture keeps telling us, which includes the mutant, the X-Men, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, well, Lord of the Rings to a certain extent, but Star Wars, let's say, Avatar. The story that's repeated over and over again is there's like this hero's journey, and as part of that hero's journey, there has to be a learning to use our psychic faculties. The Matrix.
He's trying to tell us we're all superheroes, dude.
Yeah, so if you look at mutants, they're going to this academy. They have to learn how to master these paranormal gifts. Harry Potter, you have to learn to cast your spells. Star Wars, you have to use the Force. I actually, the more that I've thought about it, and the more my own experiences have kind of echoed, some of these things, I think that these stories are so powerful because they represent a kind of yearning that people have for a kind of initiatory training and extrasensory perception. And that is something that our society, has rigorously denied us, And I think if you look at like what happens to you when you're like an adolescent, like let's say you're 15, 20 years old, you have this, you have this beginning, and when you're a young teenager, you have this tremendous sense of expectation. You're like waiting for some transformative thing to happen to you. And then it doesn't happen. And so instead you accept a lot of basically crappy, degraded substitutes, like dulling entertainment, like, watching athletes do this and that or whatever, rather than having gone through something that you always just know is missing, but then the culture kind of like hides it from you. And I think that thing that's missing from our culture is this direct initiatory process.
How is the culture hiding it from you, though? I think the culture, the water sort of seeks its own level on a lot of these things, and a lot of people just get lazy and don't look for it. And this culture that's opening up right now, experiences now are being detailed and talked about that people could never understand before. The connection that people have together through the internet now, there's never been anything like this before. I don't think it's getting dumber. I think there's always going to be a certain amount of dumb people. Yeah, well, I think there's always going to be a certain amount of people that smoke cigarettes.
Totally. Well, I think I just stopped actually recently, which was very exciting.
Did you really? Yeah. You smoke cigarettes?
I know. Is that pathetic?
Wow.
Yeah. Just for
You're such a smart guy.
I know.
What the fuck is that?
I know. I apologize.
That's what a ruthless
He
drug.
doesn't get it.
I want you to get it,
just
bro.
so you get it,
I swear to God, I get
fucking
it.
putting cigarettes
I fuck with you because I love you because you're one of my best friends. But I get
actually,
it
was through ayahuasca that I stopped.
Damn.
Actually, it was through ayahuasca that I started also, to be honest, because there's a whole relationship between ayahuasca, shamanism, and the Amazon and tobacco.
Right.
So that's when I first started smoking.
They blow tobacco on you, right?
They do, and it's also, there's something about tobacco and ayahuasca that are very synergetic together. I mean, tobacco is considered a very important power plant.
You tried the patch first?
Why didn't you try cigars? Well, you can get natural tobacco.
Yeah, I did natural tobacco. I tried. Yeah.
Cigars are way better for you. I mean, they're probably not the best thing for you, but they're better for you than cigarettes.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's all the chemicals in cigarettes that are.
No, I smoked like natural American spirits. I mean, I stayed at least at that level of like.
Okay.
That shit seems like it hurts me more though. Like when I do natural spirits, it's like the next day I'm coughing up black.
It's because it's not giving you any numbing power.
It's like cigar or something.
There's 590 fucking ingredients in cigarettes.
Yeah.
That, by the way,
that are usually made to
are all
make
government
it
approved.
Better.
Did anybody really go over all those 590? A lobbyist, right? Who the fuck went over all those ingredients and made sure that they're all cool? People are dying 500,000 a year in America alone directly related to cigarette smoking.
What you were saying, though, a lot of people probably, I think, also feel like they did accomplish what they wanted in life. Like, I think it seems almost negative that you say it like that because, I talked to my dad. He's like, fuck yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I love my life. I'm happy. I'm married.
That's kind of rare, though, dude. Don't you think your dad's pretty smart?
No,
That's
I mean, unless... I think that's just a negative look. I think a lot of people like what they do. I mean,
you got a
great
great job, though. You got an easy job.
No, I'm not talking about me at all. I'm not talking about me at all. I'm talking about like my mom, my dad, like everyone I grew up around with. They all liked what they did.
Well, you might have been lucky, and you grew up in the Midwest, and you grew up in a different time.
All I'm offering you is like my way of thinking about it. Your way of thinking might be different.
No.
My personal experience growing up was like. I thought there would be this amazing thing that would happen as you enter adulthood.
You got to do something to have those things, man. You got to, I've always said that there should be some sort of a right of manhood or right of. It doesn't have to be even a manhood thing attached to like something manly or aggressive. Yeah. I mean, to finding your character, finding your limitations, doing something extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the thinkers that I wrote about in my books talked about how cultures need to have some type of initiatory ritual. And if they don't have it consciously constructed, it'll end up being unconsciously, destructive. It'll happen through war or through destruction of the environment or something. So one theory that I have about the, quote unquote 2012 or this transition that we're in is that it's almost on an unconscious level. Humanity has not been able to change its behavior, right? So it's like it's on an unconscious level. We're kind of willing ourselves into a state of catastrophe to bring about an initiation and thereby a transformation of consciousness.
100% sure.
Of that?
That.
94%.
That's strong, man. That's very strong. Those are strong words. Who knows what the fuck is going to happen? That's what I say. I say it could be some sort of a meteor impact, or it could be some sort of a Skynet thing. I do believe that something is absolutely going to happen. It just seems to me that things are moving at such a furious pace that it just can't last. And I think it's a natural cycle, man. I really do. I think the reason why we're having all these natural disasters is that's a part of a natural cycle too.
Yeah, but if you talk to my grandfather about TVs,
okay.
like he was like, "Wow, this is crazy. TV was invented. You could see TV. Where it's just us living our life, and then around a certain age, we grow up to a certain point where we're like, yeah, it's fucking spinning out of control.
That is
back
possible.
In the 40s, it's probably like Charlie Chaplin thought it was spinning out of control.
That is possible, but it also could be that human beings, even though we love to think of ourselves as being separate from all the other things in this world, we are a natural thing. And even though we have plastic fucking cars and glass, lenses for our fucking cell phones, even we are still a natural thing, and we are subject to the natural cycles of this earth, of this superorganism, of the universe itself. And even when we see crazy weather patterns and wild crazy shit, there could easily also be crazy cultural patterns. And that culture, even though we can create it and we do have control of it, it may be very well a natural movement, as natural as your evolution from baby to adulthood. It could be a natural thing.
Could be
We've published some.
Could be whoobies make me want to fucking choke a bit.
But that's a good one, man.
On the web mag, I have
That's a shirt.
a web magazine that I run, Reality Sandwich, and we've been publishing some excerpts.
Which is not Mac friendly, by the way. I want you to know that. I don't know if you know that.
It is.
Both of these computers, I tried to go to your website today and just search my name, obviously, first, but then Joe Rogan's name, and both of them kept on crashing my browser. My browser.
I don't know. I've never had that problem. And I
Really?
use a Mac.
Google Chrome. Check it out.
Do you use one of those old Macs with a trackball?
No, I use a new Mac.
Remember those trackballs in the center of it?
Anyway, we published a few pieces by a German scientist, guy Dieter Brauss, who wrote a book called Revolution 2012. And he's one of a bunch of people who are arguing that a lot of what's happening has to do with changes that are taking place throughout the whole solar system that have to do with the sun changing, that actually the electromagnetic environment of the Earth is shifting.
What is supposed to be the galactic alignment on December 21st, 2012? Because I've heard Neil Tyson, who I very much respect,
Who is that?
poo-poo it. He's a scientist. Very famous internet scientist.
Well,
Internet scientist. I shouldn't say internet. He's a scholar, a very well-respected, I believe he's an astrophysicist or something along those lines, but super, super brilliant guy. And
he poo-pooed that there was any alignment whatsoever?
Well, he said it's a constant thing, that that alignment, that same alignment happens all the time. He's like, the fact that everyone's making it out that December 21st, 2012 was the first time that this happens in 25,000 years. He's like, that's nonsense. And he's I believe, he knows more than I do.
Well, he probably knows.
He probably knows more than you do.
Yeah,
too.
for sure. So, I mean, I can just give you my little interpretation.
Do you know?
I mean, my understanding is that it's simply an optical alignment, which means there's no particular reason that we would know of that would be such a tremendous transformative thing, where the winter solstice sun rises within the dark rift at the center of the Milky Way. So, in a sense, it's an eclipse of the center of the Milky Way by the sun on the winter solstice on that particular date. So that date had a lot of significance for them. It was like the key, moment in the year. And they considered the sun to be the first father. And they saw the dark rift at the center of the Milky Way as the cosmic mother, or they also called it apparently a black hole, which is interesting because only in the last 15 years that our astronomers discover there is a huge black hole at the center of the Milky Way.
Well, they know that there's actually a supermassive black hole in the center of every single galaxy, and that supermassive black hole is 1/2 of 1% of the mass of every galaxy. So if you have a giant galaxy, it's a much bigger black hole. And they even have, the first photograph they've ever taken of a black hole eating a black hole. It's fucking crazy. Nice. It's the wildest picture, man. It's a larger black hole consuming a galaxy in a smaller black hole. It's just fuck.
So if we were to actually think about why that would be important, I mean, lunar eclipses, solar eclipses.
When you talk about this stuff, does it really work? Does it really connect in your head?
Sure.
Because to me, it sounds like we're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was just thinking, what happens if a black hole has sex with another black hole and had a black hole baby? Does that happen?
I don't think it happens. They just eat.
Does it go backwards, or does it turn into one black hole when that happens?
Just a bigger black hole. Just a bigger black hole.
So the black holes can
They don't know. It's crazy.
It's all crazy. That makes no sense.
They're studying
talk.
it. No, it's not fake talk. They know that black holes absolutely 100% unequivocally exist. So now it's just studying them and trying to figure out why. But they do know that they believe the most recent thing is that inside every black hole is the potential for an entirely another universe.
Yeah, I read this really cool book by a physicist who talked about that. That actually there might be entry point to a different universe where the cosmological constants are slightly different, just like genetic mutations, which are different in every organism.
Like the DMT
So instead of having a big bang, you would have actually had an infinite number of universes constantly kind of creating and developing through these different black hole portals. It makes actually more sense to me.
Well, one of the things that I've always felt like when I have like really intense psychedelic experiences, like the thought that a million people have is, what if this is not actually a hallucination, but in fact some sort of a chemical doorway into some other state? There's something else out there, and we're just so used to the idea that like this chair sits on the ground and this table sits here and the laptop sits in the chair and this is all normal. But we could easily be from that DMT dimension. That would be our normal everyday reality, and then we would come here and we would think this is the craziest fucking psychedelic experience ever, drinking red liquid from thin glasses and talking into electrical impulses that send them through wires, and hundreds of thousands of people listen and they ride on mass transportation and on fucking elliptical machines all over the world.
Yeah.
That is psychedelic. That's psychedelic as fuck.
Well,
I mean, that's if you lived in a dimension of pure love and eternal consciousness, all interconnected, and there was no physical matter. You would just live in the DMT realm. This world would be a completely crazy trip. You would take a drug and go to the human world for a little bit.
I remember one DMT experience I had in a group, a circle of people. At the end as I began to come out of the DMT reality or whatever, I looked around and everybody was covered in these kind of like superhero samurai armatures. They had like halos and patterns all over them, but each was very, very distinct and very
iconic?
Precise, iconic. It seemed impossible. And the thought that I had was it was actually that we were all these kind of like cosmic nomads, these beings who were able to travel through space-time, and almost as a gag we created this rendezvous in this kind of ridiculously simple meat space, where we would all come together for this one moment as a kind of trick we were playing on ourselves.
Dude, just that sentence that you said just now was so brilliant. Meat space. That is such a beautiful sentence. God, bravo. That was so well structured. Yeah, who the fuck knows? And we're gonna look back for sure one day on this, the same way we look back at those little hobbit people they found that Florens Island. And that's one of the weirdest things about it is we gotta know that this is just a step along the way. For the species, every species has moved in the same sort of direction from single-celled organism to us. It's not stopping here. This is just another step along the way. But to what? Do you wonder how much effect technology is going to have on this, or how much impact, whether it's a symbiotic thing, whether it's a biological thing, as well as a cosmological thing and a technological thing, almost converging at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, ultimately the next jump for our technology would be to somehow become symbiotic with the planetary environment. We would create no waste systems.
Is that possible? There's
an interesting book called Cradle to Cradle by this environmental designer, William McDonough, and a chemist. And they believe that they started the process of analyzing all these industrial systems, and the idea is that you could redesign them so the chemicals would actually feed back positively into the environment. It might be a 50-year plan, but first of all, you need to have the intention, just as the Wright brothers wanted to get a thing flying in the air. If we wanted to go from where we are now to redesigning all of our industrial processes so that they can actually feed back and be absorbed and actually even support the health of the planetary ecology, we probably could do that.
So we sort of accepted a step along the way in the evolutionary the evolution of engines and machines and technology and what is the word of this age? The word of the age of creating things and constructing things. Mm-hmm. That we sort of accept that that's just the way it has to be. It has to create some sort of a byproduct or a gas. When in fact, like a human being will take in oxygen that comes from plants and breathe out carbon dioxide that feeds the plants. It could have all been engineered to this state if we just kept moving with it along the same lines.
Nature is a perfected technology. We just haven't gotten to that level yet.
Which is why it was so offensive when, I found out that marijuana had been made illegal because William Randolph Hearst didn't want to convert all of his paper mills, which were all made with wood paper. He didn't want to convert everything to hemp because it would cost him millions of dollars. He was in competition with this new billion-dollar product, so he stepped in and used his resources to make it illegal and to stop the progress of would have been a natural thing, would have been something that was sort of a next step, a next level thing, to move it to the place where we could eventually get to a point where everything, like as you said, everything that we do, everything that we put out actually aids the environment instead of destroys it. That it could somehow or another be engineered.
We're still going to have to take that step. I mean, that's going to be a conscious step. I mean, I really like.
Is it possible though?
Sure. I mean, why would it not be possible? Look what we've managed to do in just such a short period of time. Really, I mean, 2 centuries ago we were in horse and buggies. Now we've arrived at this point.
But I should say, is it possible to sustain this level of society without any byproduct? Do we have that sort of a technology now?
No, we don't have that sort of technology now. So it would definitely require a transition. I think that's part of I'm writing another book right now, and a lot of what I'm thinking about is, what is the kind of transition to a kind of sane planetary culture that actually functions on a higher level. And in a way, some of the messaging is going to have to be, that there's going to be a difficult period, where we actually have to scale down our use of resources significantly.
And you're basing all this stuff completely on human behavior and human actions. You're not even factoring natural disasters into it, right? Because real big cataclysmic events, there will be catalysts for change, no matter whether you like it or not. It'll be completely unavoidable because
we're getting more and more of them. I think that's why we have to really think about the fact that we have a very limited time to turn around. What's that?
Just went off the air somehow.
Yeah, it's Ustream's fucking up.
Ustream's awesome, dude.
I know that.
Don't be mean.
No, I'm just saying it's fucking.
They fuck up all the time.
Really?
Yeah. It's brutal. But it's always live on. It always goes to iTunes in the unedited form. We just have to reboot. It's back up now.
Okay.
So where were you?
Natural disasters.
Natural disasters. Yeah, how much do you factor that?
So I think what it's basically we can see where we're going at the moment. There's more and more natural disasters coming faster and faster. Some of that may be because of the fact that we're going through a whole solar system-wide transition, as scientists like Dmitriev from Russia talks about, and this guy Dieter Bros. Some of it may be because the level of human consciousness is more meshed with the natural state of the planet than we actually can comprehend quite yet, which is what most of the indigenous people believe. I mean, I've been visiting, we've been doing retreats down in Colombia to work with the Kogi Indians, and they walk 25 hours down from the mountains to hang out with us, and that's basically the message that they've been giving us from their older understanding of the nature of reality. It's somehow the level of human spiritual development and how much we are in a reciprocal relationship to our local world, has an effect on what type of catastrophes do or don't occur. That's their perspective.
God damn. So when the earth is sick, it's because we're sick, and we're all sick along with it. So as tsunamis and hurricanes and earthquakes and ultimately shifts of the polar ice caps and shit like that, and super volcanoes and Yellowstone that are ready to blow and kill half the shit on the continent, that is all in correspondence with the sickness of this species, of us?
That's the indigenous perspective.
God damn, that's a scary thought. But listen, man, if we look at the ideas of quantum physics, that even observing something with certain intentions can actually change the outcome of particles, when they do those tests, those slot tests, and they show that observing an experience actually has an effect on the result of the experiment.
Or you could say there's no such thing as just being an impartial observer. You're always participating in the outcome.
That's a better way of looking at it. it really does make sense that it operates on macro, micro, and ultimately, this one gigantic level.
Right, which is what like Western alchemists talk about when they said as above, so below.
How fucking crazy is it, the idea that human behavior can actually inspire storms? You don't want to say that because you don't want to say that like the most fucked up places are the places get the storms. But I used to do jokes about it. They're cruel jokes that I would never do now. But I used to do jokes about how tornadoes were attracted to the smell of white trash and that they just circle when you have too much macaroni and cheese and 40-ounce beer in one air location. But it's a terrible idea. It's a terrible joke. It's really cruel to think that you're cooler than these fucking poor people that live in some place where the sky becomes an angry monster. But it is kind of weird that they only land in fucked up places. You don't want to think that. You don't ever want to blame people for that. But wow, I mean, obviously we know that's not true because there's geographic centers in this country where they're certainly attracted to, But the idea that more of them come because people are more fucked up and they're accelerating because our society is deteriorating, that's a terrifying thought that we're responsible for that.
Well,
or even on a 1% level. Even that we're responsible for just having any influence on it. Not that we created, but that we even have any bearing on natural disasters.
As I discussed in like the 2012 book, like the Hopi, for instance, who live in Arizona, tribes like that may have actually chosen to live in very difficult environments where survival is really like on a knife edge because it forced them to be able to do things like rain dances.
So they did it on purpose, or do you think that it's just is that it, or is it that it's the result of them living in this difficult environment? They develop more character.
Well, it's quite possible because they had a large choice earlier on of where they were going to leave, and it's possible they actually chose to leave and live in very difficult environments because it forced them to develop their initiatory and psychic capacities.
The only reason why I'd question that is because back then resources were so scarce and you were on foot essentially. Yeah. So if you were on foot, how much fucking ground can you cover, and how much do you know about other lands? How much do you know about if you move 5 hours south, it doesn't get that cold? You don't fucking know.
Actually, I totally disagree with what you just said.
Really?
Well, on both levels. First of all, I think that they did know. I mean, for instance, we now understand that there was like a sign language. Even native people who didn't speak the same language could actually communicate with a very highly developed sign language that was all across the continent. And second of all, what they've discovered is that a lot of native cultures were actually more like cultures of abundance than cultures of scarcity. That actually the amount of work that they had to do today, compared to what we have to do, an average day was a lot less.
But that doesn't match up with your idea of them moving to a very difficult environment to stay alive.
Well, I'm talking about the Hopi in particular. Let's say, they were like the Tibetan Buddhists of the native people. Like they chose the most difficult spot.
Did they state this anywhere, or is this just a conclusion or a feeling you have?
No, it's a theory. It's a theory. I mean, maybe it's ludicrous, but it was a sense I had when I visited them for the book, and I read a lot about them, anthropological accounts and so on. But the whole thing is they would put themselves through these extraordinary, efforts. Like the Hopi snake clan, they would go all around the area. They would collect all of the most poisonous snakes they could possibly find. Then the men would sit, just naked, wearing loincloths in a circle with their knees touching. They would open up all of the snakes in the middle of the circle, and the men would have to sit entirely still until all of the snakes had crawled past them.
Wow. That's pretty fucking wild. They definitely had their shit together when it came to rites of passage. I remember that movie, A Man Called Horse. Do you remember that?
No, I didn't see that.
It was a God, I forgot the guy's name. He played the father in Gladiator. Peter O'Toole? I believe it's Peter O'Toole. I might be incorrect. Anyway, amazing fucking movie, but one of the scariest parts of it is one of these rites of passage that he has in order to become one with their tribe. He was an American or an Englishman, or I forget what the fuck it was. But they hung him by his nipples. They used to do shit to test your limits.
Oh, they still do. The sun dances, they lance you through the pectoral muscles and hang you up.
Whoa! Yeah. Really? Is that necessary?
Apparently, yes.
Yeah.
It's the Indian equivalent of teeth straightening, I guess, or Botox injection or something.
Oh, it's way worse than that, or way better than that, rather. It's, I think, just having something like having a bar mitzvah, having some sort of a celebration. It doesn't even have to be, you're hung from a tree by your tits. It just has to be something where, like, okay, I pass through the door. There's a symbolic door.
But that's actually, what you're saying for me is like a big distinction, because for those cultures, initiation was actually about going through some process through which you would master non-ordinary states of consciousness.
You mean what cultures?
Like the native cultures. I mean, initiation was not just a celebration. You actually had to overcome, a life-death crisis.
You had to be a warrior for them too. I mean, you're in a constant state of, defending your tribes, and you had to be able to overcome very, very terrifying situations, even in hunting. They had to make a man out of you.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of it was really more about learning to have a disciplined approach to non-ordinary states of consciousness.
To control states of consciousness. I mean, what do you mean by non-ordinary? Do you mean like peyote, enhanced? What do you mean?
I mean, obviously peyote, mushrooms, and these are all native, ayahuasca and so on. But then also things like fasting, and being, not eating for 5 nights while you're just sitting on a mountaintop or something. Or
what's the benefit of that?
It puts you in exactly the same kind of state as the psychoactive substances.
Fasting for 5 days?
Sure, those will bring on visionary experiences. They were and force you to discipline your mind to be able to withstand ingressions from like the astral realms and so on.
What do you say to people that say that doing something along the lines of fasting, where it's actually possibly dangerous to your body and that's what's causing you to have these experiences, is really kind of a silly thing to do in this day and age, where you could choose other paths to the same sort of results without damaging your body and shutting things down? I don't know enough about nutrition to tell you whether or not it's healthy, but I've read a lot of people that start talking about fasting for days and days and days. They say it puts strain on your kidneys.
It's not good for you.
I mean, I don't know. No, I wouldn't say that it is.
It's not good for you to not eat.
It probably isn't. I don't know. I know people get really weak.
I actually know a lot of people who love it and find it to be very helpful. And actually, in terms of extending the human lifespan, they found that reducing your caloric intake is the most direct way to do that.
Well, that makes sense. It's just your body's going at less RPMs. A race engine's not gonna last as long.
There's a good episode of Penn and Teller bullshit. Look at the cleansing episode where they go through like the diets, like the lemon detox diets and shit like that, where you don't eat. They also go through the colonics and the whole thing like that. The whole thing it's a crock of shit.
Penn and Teller's bullshit makes some excellent points, but they also make some silly ones because they want to find the conclusion that everything is bullshit. That's what they're doing.
I don't think they're ever saying
they dismiss yoga. I watched them dismiss yoga. He's talking about it's just stretching. And I was like, wow, you're crazy. You've never done a yoga class. If you do yoga for 2 hours and tell me that's just stretching,
right,
that shit makes you high.
Yoga episode.
Yoga makes you high. Yoga makes you. I've gotten as high from yoga as I have from a couple hits of pot. No doubt about it. No doubt. Like real strong pot. I've gotten to like body tingling moments, like especially if you take like a real good class, like hot yoga where you go real deep into poses and you really hold them. Anybody that dismisses that as just stretching, you're either not giving me the full information that you have access to, or you did a really sloppy job of investigating it. You can't just say these fucking Indian masters that have been doing this shit for thousands of years are just stretching. And that's why they have these very specific poses that they believe activate very specific regions and hemispheres of the chakras of the body. You can't just dismiss that.
Well, you can if you want. I mean, that's what's so kind of interesting and cool about what's happening right now and how things are so complex. I mean, I was looking at a book by this guy Dean Radin, who studies psychic phenomena as a scientist at Institute of Noetic Sciences, and we interviewed him for a film. He wrote a book called The Self-Aware Universe, and he analyzes a whole centuries worth of data on psychic experience statistically. He even looks at reports from the U.S. Army and the government, which support the existence of psychic phenomena of non-local communication, mind to mind, which means that consciousness is not simply brain-based. It exists in a different way. But I've also read recently this book by Richard Wiseman called Paranormality, who believes there's no psychic phenomena, busts every evidence for it, and in his own way is quite convincing. So for me, it just makes it a very interesting time, where you can approach anything and analytically rip it apart and find the weak spots, but maybe what's missing from Penn and Teller and Richard Wiseman's understanding is the sense that intention is somehow a fundamental aspect of the universe. So if your intention is to take something apart, desecrate it, ignore it, and so on, you can do all of that for sure. But but within there, you've kind of missed a subtle key that actually makes life worth having in a way.
Well, intention is aware, and you can be aware of it in a very tangible form in the art of stand-up comedy. You cannot be thinking about something different, say something else, and have the people react to it. They won't. It won't work. It's a weird thing. You could have the joke worded correctly. You could say it with the right intonation. But if your mind isn't into it, they can smell it. It's the weirdest fucking thing in the world. A connection that you have with an audience, it could be an audience of 200 or it can be an audience of 1,000. If you reach that full connection, it is like a giant mass hypnosis. There is some sort of a relationship that you had with these people, and if somehow or another something hits you, you remember something, or something bothers you, or you think about an argument that you got in with your girlfriend, or a bill you forgot to pay, or any distraction that makes you feel in a negative way, even if you're saying the words the same way, the audience will feel it. They will feel it, and they will back off you. You can feel it. You can feel them go, he's not engaged. It's legit, man. It's real. You can't tell me it's not. I've always said that, I do my best to write stand-up. I sit down. I do my best to put in the time to be there to make the writing happen. And I do in the time when I perform enough so that I get on stage that I'm really comfortable and I relax. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not exactly sure how that shit is even coming out. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know what's happening. And when I'm on stage, when I'm completely locked in, I am as much a passenger as I am the person who steers it. And as long as that works, as long as I'm in that groove and the audience is in that groove, the whole thing will go seamlessly. But one little hiccup, one little bad thought, one little error, one little stress point, and everybody hops off the ride and waits and looks at you. And goes, you going to get this thing going again? And you go, yeah, I'll get back in. Everybody get back in the ride. We're okay. Do you know what you're doing now? Yeah, I know what I'm doing now. They can tell. And that's a psychic connection. That's a legit, tangible psychic connection. That when you're on stage, you feel it from the crowd. You feel like waves of positive and negative. You literally feel the energy. You can say that, right? You've had really good sets on stage, and you've had jokes that bombed, and you've had people angry at you. You felt that, right? Don't you feel it like a wave?
It affects you just like anything, like getting hit by a snowball,
Yeah.
Like if you got a bad joke on stage, that's the worst. If you had a bad joke on stage, but it would hit before, you were like having a great day. Yeah. After that, you're having the worst day ever. Yeah, just like if you just got hit in the face with a snowball.
Your life is the exact same life. Literally none of the hard details have changed. And yet you feel like a fucking loser, because these people have let you know you have not given us what we want.
Yeah.
There's this weird sort of an exchange that's going on with an audience.
I think like hypnosis and trance are things that are operating like much of the time,
Have you ever watched a mass hypnosis show?
Yeah, I did watch it on college once, yeah.
Oh,
thanks, sorry.
They used to have them all the time in Boston at the, there's a place called the Comedy Connection. Every week they had this guy, Frank Santos, who would do a hypnotist comedy show that seemed like bullshit until you saw it a few times. And when you saw it a few times, you would realize, oh my God, these people are really fucking under. It's so weird. And not everybody, he would know. He would go up to the people that weren't, and he'd look at them and go, okay, you get off the stage. And he'd pull the people off the stage. But the people that were up there, for whatever reason, he found their hack code. He got into their frequency.
I tend to look at most of our, politicians and, news anchors as kind of Illuminati sorcerers who use trance and hypnosis to keep people in a lowered state of consciousness, a lowered state of suggestibility.
Illuminati.
I hate black wizards.
He got robbed by a black wizard. A guy dressed up like a wizard put a gun in his chest. Sort of. Guy had a fake beard on.
Oh, really?
So he called him a black wizard.
It sucks, man. There's this guy at my Starbucks, and I feel so bad for him because he totally reminds me of him, the guy that robbed me. And every time I fucking walk in there, I'm just like, damn, I'm fucking totally just eyeing this guy more than I normally would eye somebody.
Suspecting
him.
him.
I'm like waiting in line, and I'll just be like, what's that guy doing?
Like a dog that used to bite you.
Yeah, exactly. And I've caught eyes with him like 3 times. I feel so fucking bad about this. I might have to switch Starbucks because of it.
Just switch Starbucks, dude.
Yeah, I'll just do that.
Just, it's on you, man.
Yeah. But then he's kicking me out of the Starbucks. What if it's him too? That's probably even weirder.
The idea that you somehow or another manifested that is where things get really spooky. You know, the people that believe that you manifest every single action in your life and that you have some sort of ultimate control.
I wouldn't say it's not really you. It's more like the I like the Vedanta perspective. That basically there's like a singular consciousness. You know, we're kind of like, you know, we're part of the projection. You know?
Okay. What is the way, if that is the case, how can I avoid some horrible bullshit in my life? I just have to do the right thing and be super nice and always go in a positive direction. And
you can't control that shit, dude. You can't control it. Like I'm starting to think that you can't control it at all.
Just if you can't avoid it, just ignore it. What's the bullshit that you can't ignore?
Oh well, just like life and death, people dying,
for whatever reason
sickness.
Right now in all my life, for whatever reason right now, the last year to 2 years of my life have been the most psychotic and crazy, but yet I've also been the most successful.
Pause, please.
The most successful.
Pause, please. He's been dating porn stars. Mm-hmm. Okay, what the fuck, man?
All right.
You know what I'm saying?
I also watched a dog fucking die. I've also got mugged by a gun. I've also fucking had a million other things that lately that has been happening that in my whole life never has. My life has been boring as fuck, you know?
True.
And now I'm having like horrible things happen to me at the same time as I'm having like the best time of my life.
Well, you know, maybe there's something wrong in the formula of how you're interacting with the grid. Maybe there's something wrong. What if you had to forget it? Forget your life. Put it away.
Right.
You're not even you. If you had to look at your
how many
life
people get
objectively.
audited?
Hold on, we're taking exercise.
Too. What the
Bro,
fuck?
a lot of people. That's how the government steals money from you. Hold, please.
Not one of my friends have got audited.
Hold, please. If you were not you, okay, forget about the emotional attachments you have to all your issues. How would you fix you? What would you say? You know, the one thing that we would like to correct about Brian would be X. What would it be?
What's the number one thing?
Yeah, if you could, instead of working at something, if you could just correct something about your behavior, the way you think about things, or the way you look at the world, or anything, what would it be?
Do not throw cum on walls.
Okay. What if you just stop doing that?
I really don't.
Related?
I really don't. Like, I never think.
So you don't believe that any of your
about myself. I don't feel like I have any flaws. I don't overthink in my personal.
This is what I'm trying to get to. I don't know if it's either or. I don't know if you look. There's babies that are killed in drive-bys, and when I hear about that, I go, well, that doesn't. How the fuck does that work? What's going on there? You know, did the baby have some negative thoughts? And then I think about it, and I think about all the positive things that have happened in my life and all the positive things that I know have manifested themselves through a certain type of thinking, a certain ethic, a certain way of looking at the world. And I wonder if it is either or if it's a combination of things. You know what I'm saying? Daniel?
I tuned out for a second, sorry.
I don't blame it.
No, but I just personally think that the only choice we ever have is to like look at the bright side or the crappy side. So why not just always look at the bright side?
Yeah, but you were looking at the end of civilization.
I was just looking at the moment. I was looking at your Doom statue and your voodoo doll and your kind of your sort of Balinese demon there.
Dark side.
I just wonder what it represented.
I'm actually the Balinese stuff is just I've always been fascinated by Eastern art. I think it's beautiful, and I think it's amazing how cheap it is. You could get like this amazing thing.
Because it's haunted. That's why. Because there's little kids that made it. Little 4-year-old kids made it. Little ginger kids.
Artwork, man. I love this.
No, I have one of those things too.
I'm not really into like I've bought paintings before, and I don't kind of get a lot of what people are really into. So there's some. I was at a guy's house once, and he had a picture on the wall, and I go, "Oh, did your kid make that?" And this guy goes, "Oh no, that's that's like $30,000." And I went, "What the fuck are you talking about?" It looked like some painting on some ripped pieces of cardboard that were randomly stuck in a beautiful frame, and I really thought that it was something that a kid did. So I don't get that shit.
There needs to be a Pier 1 that's just that kind of shit. Like Gold Buddhas, but more of a corporate place that's just super cheap. Like that could be like $10. I want to buy a dragon mask, but I want feathers. I want to be cheap. You know, because like that kind of shit's popular. Everyone likes that kind of shit. Why don't they make it like a Walmart of that shit?
Brian, I think you're missing the
I also think that they should make cat food and dog food into one food. They could probably easily do that.
I don't think they can. I think they have different dietary needs. You
All
fuck.
right. They can all eat chicken, right? Okay, so put that on the list.
Well, if you want to go straight,
they can all eat basil. All right, put chicken basil on the list.
This guy is brutal to work with, man. I'm sorry I brought
It makes
you in
sense,
here.
right?
I brought a serious man in here. He's a fucking New York Times
It drives me
bestseller.
crazy.
And you're talking nonsense about cat and dog food, you lazy cunt.
Why don't
go
they
out
just
and buy
do
the
that?
cat food.
It seems
Go out and buy
really
the dog
easy.
food. Stop fucking up the
My
show.
cat's eating dog food and my dog's eating the cat food.
Well,
Why don't they just mix
You got
it?
a problem that you got
So
cats
Swiss
for a bunch of
rolls?
ex-girlfriends, you fuck. This guy, he gets a new relationship, and he's like, oh my God, we should get a kid. And they go out and they get a fucking dog. And then the girls dump him, and he's got a goddamn zoo at his house.
It's like watching Little Orphan Annie. I'm like Daddy Warbucks.
Sorry, man. This is a serious podcast, but it's also a comedy podcast. The good news is we've had an excellent conversation. I guarantee you a lot of people will buy your shit.
So, hey, Joe, I was at the Comedy Store, and there's that whole ghost thing that happens.
There's no
at the
fucking
Comedy Store.
ghosts anywhere.
I know, but
I'm so tired of. Do you believe in ghosts?
Of course.
Oh my God.
Joe, I was sitting in the green room behind the main room. We were all smoking
Who
pot.
doesn't know that ghosts are real? I've collected so many incredible stories about ghosts.
Really?
yeah,
What do they
course.
do?
I mean, a friend of mine. Her friend's brother had committed suicide, and she was sleeping in the house where he had died, and she had a dream that they were having sex. And she woke up from the dream, and her covers were up, and there was this kind of like spirit figure over her. And as soon as she began to open her eyes, it dissipated.
There's no way that could have been a dream inside a dream.
No, of course it could have been anything. Of course it could. But I mean, it's only. I mean, because there's no. How are you going to verify this type of thing? But when I've collected a whole number, of anecdotes told to me by people and observing their state, their efforts to kind of understand it, to fathom it. My own experiences also, I've had similar. I think that there's no doubt that, probably, psychic energy collects in physical environments, and when people are no longer there, if they have a stake in that environment and they're not finished with their business in the world, they hang out, or some piece of them.
The energy of regret and resentment or something, some sort of a bad energy is enough to keep a residue of that person.
When my father died, he had a loft, it was full of his paintings and his sculptures. And he had a big freight elevator. Like I was working with two guys, bringing his stuff out. As we're bringing out the last shipment of his sculptures down in the freight elevator, suddenly the light bulb, just totally popped, and we were in darkness. And, we were all looking at it. Nobody had touched it. Somehow that psychic energy that was constellated, between us and him, caused this thing to happen.
Or the light bulb.
I was in the green room.
Like the phone call that you didn't have to make today. To me, there are certain things when you feel the synchronicity, it's like a click, and it's like you have an intuitive, acceptance that you're being shown a little bit of like the fabric of space-time, making a little bit of a ripple or something.
I was in the green room, seriously, with like 8 people, 9 people.
This is at the Comedy Store?
The Comedy Store, like
the
4
Comedy
days
Store,
ago.
if you didn't know, for just FYI, was Ciro's nightclub. And it was Bugsy Siegel's hangout in Hollywood, and a lot of people allegedly were murdered there. Mm-hmm. And every single person who has been there for more than X amount of years has some sort of a ghost story. Every one of the waitresses has something, managers have something. How much of it is psychosomatic? How much of it is suggestion?
How much is the other comics? And I was sitting there with like 8 other people. We're just smoking weed, hanging out, talking, and suddenly the door sounded like somebody shot a gun through. Like it didn't sound like somebody just shook it or kicked it. It seemed way more powerful than that. To the fact that I think everybody in the room kind of got down and was like, what the fuck was that? And we all kind of got down like on the couches and on the ground as if we all thought for sure that was a gunshot.
Right. Well, just let me stop right there.
Yeah, and then
it's
of course
an old-ass building. Here's what's important.
Mm-hmm.
This is a building from the 1920s that's on a fucking fault line.
Right.
Those buildings shift. And every now and then they shift, and they literally crack, and it'll make a noise. I've been in the Comedy Store when it makes noises.
Okay.
It's an old ass building.
As fuck.
I'm not saying that it wasn't a ghost.
No,
but I'm saying that the most likely
more
explanation is that.
I thought it was another comic, and it's just like the secret. Like, oh yeah, we take this plunger and then we just hit it as hard as we can. Like, there's an old comedy secret.
my grandparents lived in a supposedly haunted house, and I stayed there with them in Newark, New Jersey, and it was on North 9th Street, and there was a guy who actually died in the house, and he was a guy who was renting a room there, and he died, and they always thought that this house was haunted, because the house is always making noises, but it's a fucking house that was built in like 1909. It's an old fucking house. And when you're dealing in a place like New Jersey that's moist all the time and it rains all the time, and then it gets hot in the summer and cold in the winter, wood is like, it's an organic piece of, construction. It constricts, it expands depending on the moisture in the air, depending on it being cold or hot. And the old houses like that, they make a lot of fucking noise. They creak. They're always clack, clack, clack. And people are like, this fucking place is haunted. Mm-hmm. Or it's an old house, man. But I'm not completely averse to the idea of ghosts. But a lot of people that talk about ghosts are full of shit.
Well, I just think if there is ghosts, there would be an easy way to prove it, and we've talked about it before. You just go to somebody that's like wife's died in a rape, and you go to his grave or her grave and just start humping her grave or something like that.
Dude.
If there was such things as ghosts would come out and be like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
Maybe they wouldn't want to indulge you in your nonsense. Maybe you would hit the wrong frequency.
Come on.
Maybe it's not something that can easily be tuned in. Maybe it's like the Northern Lights. Like the idea of, you can't capture the Northern Lights and put it in the fucking beam and blast it on Manhattan. The Northern Lights are, it's ethereal. It's some sort of a thing that, it moves and pulsates in the sky. Maybe that's what like a ghost is, like a very minor version of that. Like it doesn't have a rhyme or reason for when it exists or doesn't exist, but sometimes
I think
it does.
It probably
does
have a rhyme and reason. It's just we don't understand those laws yet.
Right.
There's like it's not to say that it violates nature. It's just that our understanding of natural law is limited by our mental conception, by the type of science that we've constructed, and so on.
Are you convinced? I mean, what like when you look at like the evidence of ghosts and not look at ghost shows. If you looked at ghost shows,
wait, what evidence are you talking about? Do we have any solid evidence ever that there was a ghost, or just speculation?
Almost entirely speculation. There's no scientific evidence. Well, that doesn't mean that they're not real, because if you think about what a ghost is, if a ghost is something that's not in this dimension and sort of flits in and out of it, and how do you measure that? I mean, science is, everybody says, well, science says there are no ghosts, or there's no scientific evidence of ghosts. Well, science was not really designed to measure shit like ghosts. Science is designed to measure like how much does lead weigh? What happens when a star goes supernova? Observable things. When you get something like a ghost, if a ghost was real and it's an incredibly rare phenomenon that depended on some really exotic conditions, how the fuck are you going to measure that?
I'm giving the offer. If there's any ghosts listening, they can fucking rape me tonight, and they can just rape my ass all day long with their ghost sticks.
Brian,
if it happens, I'll let you know.
I got news for you. If they're going to come here from another dimension, they can do better than you.
I mean, for instance, there is like decent and interesting evidence around reincarnation.
Really?
There's a book, what's his name? Ian Stevens, who's a professor at the University of Virginia, wrote a 2,500-page book called Where Biology and Reincarnation Intersect. And he found all around the world there were children who had spontaneous recall of past lives, and often very specific. Like in India, they would be like, well, I lived in this town, my wife had this name, I had 2 kids. So in a number of cases, he found these kids, and he went back to the towns that they talked about, and they found this family and established that there had been this connection. And there was a sense of familiarity. No genetic.
No genetic line?
No genetic line. And sometimes the kids would even have like a pronounced birthmark, like a birthmark on the neck or something. And it would turn out that the previous, incarnation perhaps had died of a wound to the neck in a fight or something like that.
Is it possible that the connection is an abstract one, that they haven't met it yet, but that yet there's not a balanced value to learned experiences that are transferred through genetics, like instincts, and that perhaps some instincts that we have are really like things go wrong, you learn from them, that's why you're afraid of cats. I mean, kids are afraid of monsters.
Well, this is
that
like
live in New York City.
7-year-old kid suddenly out of nowhere saying, I have a wife in Agra. I have 2 kids. I need to see them again.
But this is my point. Isn't it possible? I mean, isn't it possible that somehow or another that there is a memory that through whatever mutation or whatever extreme condition or weird circumstance as far as like physical biology becomes a more potent one, and that this, as it is transferred through generations, awakens this memory, awakens this experience that someone who shared these genetics so many generations ago actually did have, that all of a sudden for whatever strange reason.
I don't think there's any idea that genetic material could hold memory like that.
Well, what about memes? What about the idea that even racism can be transferred genetically? I mean, that's a really kind of a widely considered idea, almost unprovable, but considered by mainstream scientists.
I think that like a lot of those ideas about all these things being inherited by the genetics being this kind of master molecule are actually being kind of challenged right now by the emerging biology of epigenetics, which is recognizing that awareness actually begins at the boundary of the cell where chemical signals are exchanged. There's a kind of cognitive process that happens even at the permeable boundary of the cell, as some signals are allowed in and some are ignored or rejected, and that what's allowed in actually then influences how the genetic material expresses itself and reproduces itself.
But
that actually it's not so much the genetic material as the master molecule. It's more as if the whole cell is a unit of cognition or awareness. This is very much thinking of people like Varela.
But is this a theory, or they have done a detailed? But they haven't done a detailed accounting.
Sure,
right.
They have. Yeah, I mean, this is you look at the biologist Bruce Lipton. He has a book called Biology Beyond Belief, really looking at how consciousness and awareness begin even at a cellular level, and how that in itself influences and inflects how the genetic material expresses itself, that the genes are not master molecules.
The whole idea of it is so fascinating. The idea of, what instincts, I mean, where do instincts come from? I mean, is it all from one initial source? Stay away from fire. You get scared when you see snakes. I mean, these are all learned impressions in our material, the material that makes human beings. There's certain things that you show people, and children when they're really young have certain fears and notions of the boogeyman and the monster that lives in the woods and the things in the dark, and a lot of these are imprinted from being killed by jaguars, from some proto-hominid that lived 5,000 or 5 million years ago. They got killed by jaguars, and those instincts are still tingling in the background noise of our minds.
Mm-hmm. That's possible, and that could also be explained. You ever get into like Rupert Sheldrake's ideas around like morphogenetic fields?
Yeah, about dogs knowing when their parents are coming home.
So maybe there was this species encounter that was like a near-death encounter for humanity, and it left this morphogenetic field of fear and terror around the snake or around the jaguar or something like that.
Yeah, well, we are certainly moving, I mean, if I had to guess, into some sort of a state where that becomes more and more aware. Wouldn't you agree?
What becomes more and more aware?
The state of this interconnectedness, this morphogenetic field, this idea that that we are living in some sort of a complex meshwork of biological life and natural laws and physics and space and radiation, and all of it together are combined and it's sort of people are realizing it now, like way more than ever before. I mean, when I was a kid, there was none of this talk. There was nothing along these lines. Yeah,
it's extraordinary, and maybe that is pointing towards a kind of next phase of evolution as a species. I mean,
do you think it's technology that's going to do that?
Well, I think we have to look at technology itself as an aspect of the evolution of consciousness. That actually, like, we're tool using and tool making species. We make a new tool, then we look at the tool or the instrument we've made, and it reflects us back at ourselves. And then it gives us new metaphors for understanding ourselves. Then it allows us to make another more advanced tool, and that creates a whole new set of metaphors. So now we've gotten to the point in our tool creation and tool using where this feedback loop is happening faster and faster. So but it's still, a tool is a projection of our consciousness, of our thought into the material realm, which then gives us information about ourselves, which then leads us to create another tool, which also advances and evolves our consciousness in that process.
Do you ever get to the point where you get upset that you have a connection with these items, these technological items like phones, or do you not regret it ever, or do you just accept it and enjoy it?
I think it's very fascinating. I mean, it's also, as we've been part of what we've been doing with Reality Sandwich is bringing people down to work with indigenous shamans and elders. So recently we went down to Colombia and worked with these Kogi guys from the mountains in Colombia. And when we hung out with them, we were in a place without any electricity for 8 days. So no phone, no computer. And after like a day and a half, I was like, what did I want all that stuff for again? Like, this is so much nicer. Suddenly you can see the stars. You're at night, you like light a fire. Then the fire goes out, you go to sleep, you wake up at dawn. I mean, I think that actually we may find that we've gone way too far on this technological path, that we thought that we've had a kind of, in a sense, the religious belief of modern society is linear technological progress, leading to some kind of singularity or transformation. That we may actually back up from that and be like, well, wait a second, where is this stuff leading to? I mean, actually, I have more plastics in my tissues. My eyes are going bad from looking at these tiny screens. Why is life constantly mediated by glowing rectangular screens anyway? That actually we might want to, retract from this technological path and develop in a different direction, which doesn't mean rejecting technology. It's more about mastering our projections rather than feeling that we always have to get enmeshed in them and then move in that direction.
Is it sort of like riding a bike too fast and you're going downhill and you go, oh, fuck, like it's good to ride this bike, but I've gotten kind of away from my own biological control of this situation?
Well, that's certainly what's happened to us as a species. I mean, on every level, we've been seduced by our technological projections. In a sense, we've lost our grounding on the planet.
Do you ever consider the idea that we're in some sort of a weird symbiotic relationship where it's our job as the host to create this environment where the parasite, which is technology, this new life form that we've created to exist and then ultimately discard us, because it is the next stage of not organic life, but of consciousness. And that consciousness, the next stage of consciousness will be artificial consciousness created by this consciousness that was created by biological life. And that we are only here to usher in the next stage. And that next stage is an electronic form, a stage that doesn't have emotions or nonsense or any of this shit that torments us.
It's just not the way I look at it. And first of all, we don't know. We have no reason at this point to really believe that an artificial intelligence can become conscious in the way we are. I mean, machines may have a form. I mean, everything may have a form of sentience, but we may still have a very important role if we're in our proper state in the cosmic unfolding.
But should we? I mean, if we are a step along the way, who's to say that step eventually continues along a biological train? Maybe it really is truly our destiny to create some sort of an artificial life that's not burdened down by our monkey DNA and all the instincts that we needed to evolve to this point with the curiosity that would allow us to make something as crazy as artificial intelligence and computers. Maybe we're just the carriers. Maybe we're the carriers of the disease that eventually takes off and develops on its own.
I guess part of what I would suggest to you is that part of our opportunity right now is to become co-creative with the evolutionary process. And that, in a way, means that we have to step into a much more responsible and mature role where we actually become participants. And in a way, we still kind of enjoy the spectacle of our own alienation and our own potential destruction. So we kind of enjoy kind of like elaborating these sort of futuristic mythologies of how our technology is going to overwhelm us or devour us. I mean, that might be the case, but all we really know at this point is that we have will, we have intelligence, we have consciousness, and we're not using it very well. So the first thing I would think that we would want to try to do is use it very, very effectively to see what type of better situation we can rapidly create, rather than fobbing off our responsibility onto, there's going to be this technological thing, or it's too late, we fucked the planet, or there's some new age psychic children coming along. All that stuff to me is just bullshit-ass dodges that basically is other ways that we're avoiding taking full responsibility for the planetary situation that we as a species have created, which is, for me, is really the only way we're going to possibly create a better world in the time that we have before things go to hell.
Well, I do agree that as a person who's a big proponent of team people, I definitely advocate the idea of us figuring out what the fuck we are doing and making it better for all of us and our relationship with the planet. But to me, that doesn't seem like you're fobbing that off, but considering the possibility that we are merely here, as many other parasites and hosts are in this world. And you look at like grasshoppers, where they're infected by aquatic worms, and the aquatic worms trick the grasshopper into jumping into water, and the grasshopper drowns so that the worm can be born out of its body.
I personally think that we actually are infected by a parasitical agency, and I would say that agency is something like the dominator empire complex. The sense that we have of separation from nature, the sense that we have the right to, annihilate ecosystems, dominate ecosystems, control other people, the whole trip of empire, the slavery. I mean, there's still tons of slavery around the world, domination of women. That's the parasite that's eating us alive right now, and that's where if we can go through our inner initiatory process, we can begin to find the antidote or the cure to that. But it's not about from my perspective, like giving it up to technology, as an amazing thing. It's more like reclaiming our human capacity. And for me, that's really where the knowledge of the indigenous people is not, folktale, it's not silly, it's not worthless. It's actually something that those of us who care about, seeking to, move into an evolutionary, framework, they have tools and gifts for us, and that's why part of what I've been trying to do over the last a lot of my work, but now in a different way, is build bridges to the indigenous people and their knowledge systems. So I'm working now with the Kogi in Colombia and also the Sequoia from Ecuador.
What I meant by that was not that it has to be. It almost like when I look at the relationship that we have with technology, and I look at the relationship that different parasites and different hosts have, it just, as a consideration, you have to think about the fact that our society is completely obsessed with pushing innovation. We're completely obsessed. And I often look at the dominator culture, what you describe, and I say, well, you're right. I mean, that is a huge fucking problem. I mean, war and the domination of other countries and battling for resources. But what do you say to people that say that there's no way you can have a society that reaches this particular height this fast without that as a byproduct, and that in fact the reason why people push so hard to innovate and to create new things and conquer new boundaries both scientifically and socially is that it's all almost a byproduct of this desire to innovate and create and produce this next thing, and that this is all a part of us creating some artificial thing, some intelligent thing, some electronic
I think we have to break the trance of technology, which is not to say that we reject technology, but we have to break that trance that somehow this linear technological progress is necessarily bringing us to something super amazing. And for me, the shift in the future is more to a kind of psychotechnical phase of development. By that I mean that if you've had the DMT and the ayahuasca experiences, the yoga experiences, and so on, you recognize there are these vast dimensions within the psyche that are basically unknown continents, and in a sense, that for me is where the action is going to lie for us in the future. As well as potentially exploring other planets, other solar systems, and all this stuff. But at the moment, we really more need to get control of our thought projections. And the only way to do that is to undergo an initiatory process that involves, kind of getting into our unconscious patterns.
Initiatory process? Mm-hmm. Like in what way? What do you mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, hanging, fasting or hanging by your pecs for 6 days, or taking ayahuasca, for a couple of weeks until, you're so nauseous that you can't believe it, but still visions and insights keep coming up, and they begin to heal you of your, pathetic humanness.
Well, you say pathetic humanness, but then are you completely averse to the idea that we are just here to develop something else? Which, I mean, we obviously are just a step along the way, and we'll be unrecognizable a few million years.
I think that what we're here to develop is, integrity, consciousness, and willpower. And once we've developed that, then we can think about what else we may develop. At the moment, we don't have that. We just think we do.
Do you feel happy? Do you feel happy that you're, and I believe you are, one of the people that's sort of an agent of of this sort of. I believe right now, currently, we're in a very unusual age of enlightenment, and I think that the level of enlightenment that we've achieved culturally over the last year, certainly not everybody, not last year, last decade, certainly not over everybody, but generally has been more than anything that I can ever remember in my lifetime. And people like you that are pushing these ideas, and people like you that are trying to challenge the way people view things and the standard predetermined patterns of behavior we seem to have come to accept, you're a part of moving this thing along. These kind of discussions are part of moving this thing along, where people in college, or people who are getting their first jobs, people who are starting their own first businesses are stopping and they're reconsidering the direction that they move forward and what their motives are and whether or not they're just caught up in momentum.
Yeah, man, I feel extremely humble and lucky.
Do you feel obligated?
Yes, I feel tremendous obligation and responsibility to do what I can to help out, you know.
So is there a way to stop this? What is the number one problem that we have? If we have a yearn for destruction and we're constantly moving in a direction...
The number one problem that we have is that consciousness and subjectivity are mass-produced by a system that is basically keeping us in a state of, passivity and ignorance.
Is that system a natural system? Is that system there because, like everything else, like the way alpha wolves treat beta wolves, that system is almost set up in place so that there is an antagonist?
Sure. I see it as an evolutionary process, and just as the embryo has to push against the shell and finally break through, or it doesn't.
You are inspired by an antagonist. Ali needed Frazier.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we definitely have a powerful, military, industrial, corporate empire complex that has sunk its roots into our subconscious processes and our psychology, and it requires a lot of disciplined effort to recognize how it is operating through us on so many different levels, and then begin to turn it around from within.
That's the facts, bitches. That's about it. That's all you're going to absorb. I haven't absorbed this. This is an awesome conversation. Thank you very much for coming over here, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate
everything that I thought it was going to be, plus more. If anybody needs to get a hold of you or check out your stuff, what should they do? And what did you hand me here?
Okay, so I'll give you a quick rundown.
Okay.
Evolver.net is our social network.
Evolver.net.
We have the Evolver social movement. We have about 50 groups around the world now, mostly in the U.S., who meet up every month. We do consciousness raising. We create a theme that could be the future of psychedelics. It could be extraterrestrials. It could be sustainability or permaculture. We use those as both gathering points where people raise consciousness and learn, but then also nexus points for communities to build.
How long have you been doing Evolver?
It's been about 3 years.
You emailed me about this a long time ago when it was first started, but I'm so overwhelmed by shit online.
I understand, me too.
I can't
Don't worry about it.
So it's like a Facebook, like a psychedelic Facebook?
Well, kind of. It's a way for a kind of global community that's trying to understand this new paradigm and move into it, to reach out to each other and then self-organize.
Has anybody ganked my name, my screen name? Can I get my screen name?
Yeah,
Joe
for
Rogan?
sure. We'll give you,
Okay.
for
Beautiful.
Sure. Yeah, and then we have a web magazine, Reality Sandwich.
Reality Sandwich.
We're doing
.com.
We're doing live webinars. We just did one on shamanism practices with Alberto Vallaldo. So that's evolverintensives.com. And now we're doing a line of books that include this book here, Jose Arguelles' book, Manifesto for the Newosphere, which is about this idea of a transition from the biosphere to the newosphere.
Nice. And this is a nice
You're on
short
iPad,
read,
right?
too.
You have iBooks and everything like that.
Yeah, for sure. We got iBooks. So evolvereditions.com. And there's probably some other stuff. Oh, and unifyearth.com is this idea for this December 21st, 2012 global event. And people can actually sign up. There's a resource map.
What is that again?
This idea to use a Cirque du Soleil style
what is
spectacle.
the name of the site?
Unifyearth.com.
Unifyearth.com. And also, if you're into books, Breaking Open the Head was how I was introduced to Daniel. It's a great book. And I read half of Quetzalcoatl. I am a fucking ADD retard, though, and I put it down. I'll pick it up again now that we've had such an awesome conversation. Daniel Pinchbeck on Twitter. Please follow him on Twitter, along with following Red Band. And follow the Death Squad Pod on iTunes. It's a fantastic podcast collection of comedians.
We had Steve-O on yesterday.
Steve-O was on yesterday. Yeah. There's a great show with John Reap and John Heffron that he just started doing. There's Freddie Lockhart has a show called What's Good Now. There's Ari Shafir has a great show called The Skeptic Tank. Tom Segura and his woman Christina have the Your Mom's House. So there's a lot of great podcasts on there. It's a lot of fun. It's all, of course, all free. The Verizon Wireless Center, October 7th. Me and Joey Diaz and probably Ari too. I haven't talked to him, but the tickets just went on sale today. So we'll be there October 7th. Thank you very much, Mr. Pinchbeck.
Yeah. Thanks very much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much to The Fleshlight. Go to joerogan.net. Click on the link for The Fleshlight. Enter in the code name Rogan. Is this the first show that you've ever been on sponsored by The Fleshlight?
Yes.
Yes.
What is
Success.
What is The Fleshlight? Do I get one?
Yes, for sure. I'll hook you up. We are trying to combine seriousness, legitimate thinking, and completely ridiculous bullshit all together in one soup to let people know. Enjoy it. Enjoy it, bitches. It ain't gonna last. Thank you very much, Mr. Pinchbeck. On Saturday, the September rather, the 10th? Yeah. 10th.
No, today?
Saturday's the 10th.
Oh, it's 10th.
Yeah, Saturday the 10th, Tim Ferriss is coming by, and the 11th is Anthony Bourdain. All right, thank you very much. Love you, bitches, and big kiss. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.